sorry to interrupt the discussion on politics. Before it goes to religion, let me redirect.
You can get there if you want.
I think you're all making an interesting point that there is attention that needs to be paid to the underlying product. And on the other hand, none of us are denying the importance of advertising and all these tools. So let me ask this question. When does engagement lead to actual trust? What's the difference in your mind and your experience within your companies?
Well, I think it's interesting with Figo, for instance. 65% of Figo buyers are first-time car buyers. Never had a four-wheeler before. And for us, that creates a whole world of opportunity from a brand perspective. But why did they actually choose Ford over the other products and choices that they have in that segment, which is so competitive? And for us, we need, and I believe that what we've done through consumer analysis and understanding the customers who are purchasing that product and really working hard to develop a product and a value for money story in that segment and so on, that has actually got us the first step. So they've purchased a Ford product and they're continuing hopefully to enjoy that experience, but we have a lifetime of opportunity because generally most of these people are around 28 to 35 years old, first-time car buyers, and they have a lifetime of continued opportunity to stay with our brand. So that experience has got to be the base product, must meet their expectations because this is a brand new experience for them. I've moved generally either out of a two-wheeler or probably out of a two-wheeler into a four-wheeler. So all of the things that your brain told you that you expected out of that experience must be fulfilled. If it is, then it's likely that we'll retain those 60% of first-time car buyers with our brand as they move through the economic demographic and so on.
Yeah. Well, you asked me an example. We handle Sky, one of the agencies working for Sky, who's got 10 million customers in the UK. It's a hugely engaging product. People enjoy it very, very much. But what is interesting about that, the people, unless they get really good customer service, don't really trust the brand.
Right.
You need to deliver not just the engagement of the television performance, but customer service. And it's interesting, we've used social media. We do social media for them in our company, and we've managed to move double the net promoter score by managing those people who are out there in the marketplace who may have had an unhappy experience, and then you handle that, you deal with it, and you're open with it. So you can then you can manage. So that's how I think you build from engagement by delivering, and if the delivery doesn't go right, you can then deal with social media, and that then creates trust.
I think if you look at the services sector also, there's an interesting phenomenon that you do have moments of truth in services businesses, customer touch points and all of that. But when it comes to governments or banks, there's a lot of trust factor about the management. And if there's bad publicity on the leadership of an organization, it can actually have a lot of ramifications. So it's not just about the products and the solutions, but what is the leadership of the company all about? If people feel that, Jamie Dimon was a great banker and he's sort of leading JP Morgan, there's a huge trust factor that comes from that, and people can similarly have a negative view on an institution or a brand because of the leadership and the management and what they're saying or not saying during, moments of crisis particularly.
If I may add to that, there have been words, we've coined some words, and these are, other people also use them, this entire thing of moving from interruption to engagement to advocacy. Now, essentially what that means is that you can't do this controlled, sequential, centralized kind of communication, and you've got to sort of recognize that there is a much more devolved, fluid, instant kind of a consumer out there who wishes to participate. Now, just think about it this way. If you want somebody to talk about a brand, it's not that simple, right? Brands are something people use, and for them to actually make it into bigger deal than what it is not that easy. Now, take, for example, Pepsi. If they right now want to be the youth badge with the same irreverent sort of image, and they've chosen a youth passion or whatever, India passion called cricket, They've been reinventing themselves, whether it is nothing official about it in 1996, or whether it is something called first World Cup captain in the last World Cup, or whether in this first World Cup it has changed the game. The important thing is that if they're evolving, taking into account how the youth is at that point in time, in this particular case it was about business as unusual rather than business as usual. So how can you change the game, and what's the youth's empowerment in that? I think the consumer is at the heart of it. You evolve, you retain your core, evolve with the consumer in mind, and then start a conversation, because in this particular case, it was a brilliant campaign where you were talking about all the cricketers being introduced to totally different kind of helicopter shot, which has now become a lexicon, part of commentator lexicon. And then you use ways to activate that across several touch points. So it comes outside of the great TV campaign and actually becomes part of folklore. And that's when people start talking about it, and that's why you attend, there'll be a series right now, and the commentator will say, Dhoni's hit a helicopter shot again. So I think there's some learning from these kind of marketers as well.
I think there's a learning for communication agencies, because it's much more complicated. I wonder whether we should reposition ourselves as trust managers. Right. Yeah, how about it? Trust managers, because
they don't trust you now. No.
Because I think that's really what we're doing, when and all the conversations we've had the last 2 days, that's the bottom line. We're trying to manage the trust for our clients. So you heard it here first, trust managers, made in Delhi.
Okay, one last question, expanding on this topic. I mean, everyone has talked about how brands need to evolve, redefine their identity in different settings, or at least expand it, and how we also have to help consumers evolve. So we have, evolving consumer expectations and a continuously evolving company. So handling that ambiguity and expectations is incredibly important, and I think that's where trust probably gets built or broken. So do any of you have any words of wisdom on one thing that brands should never do? What is something that actually can break trust?
Oh, obviously they should not make claims about being perfect when they're not. I mean, I think that we saw some great example from Unilever yesterday. The Dove campaign, for real, I think is absolutely amazing. But I read somewhere that they had to stop it because they sell products which relate to people whitening their skin. So I think that the thing you should never do in this, everything transparent. There are no secrets now. Just remember there are no secrets. And whatever you say, you must be able to deliver and think through all the consequences. And then if you do that, you could very well be fine. But everything's transparent now. There are no secrets anymore.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And I mean, anyone that thinks that they can hide something from the broader community is deluding themselves, and it becomes a much more challenging environment in terms of this multifaceted issue of trust in the brand. It's not just about the product. It's about, as we were saying, how do we treat our employees, and how do we resonate and interact in terms of, as a financial institution, is this a stable institution, and so on. So I think it's transparency and willingness to be open, and any time you want to try and hide something, do not do it, because it will be a disaster.
Another one there is that I don't think brands should talk down to consumers. Coke in India had actually a false start. When they of course exited in mid-70s, when they came back, they used to just air at that point in time international commercials, no local commercials. There was a commercial called Hilltop, which was all about people coming onto the top and saying, I want to buy a world of Coke. Now, when you're coming in a different context, it's a very moving commercial. But you've been out of the country 18 years, you come back and you've got people from an alien environment coming and say, I want to buy the world of Coke. They'll say, go take a walk. Because they're used to seeing Campa, Cola, Pepsi, all thumbs up, all the rest of them. And at that point in time, the credibility comes down. Of course, the corrections that have happened, India, all the rest of that is now history. But you should never talk down. And we see sometimes that being repeated.
Yeah, I think brands and companies should remain humble in times of success, because there's a crisis around the corner, and even the most strongest brands will go through a crisis at some point in time. So if you lose that humility, in a way I'm agreeing with what Vikram is saying, if you lose that humility, it really comes back to bite big time.
Okay, so I have one last question for all of you. I think we've had a lot of talking about responding to consumer needs, and a lot of trust is about empathizing with the consumer, but how do companies really understand how to do that? I don't think all of the mistrust that we may or may not see is a result of bad intentions. I think sometimes it's cluelessness. So what are some of the things that we can do to really empathize with the consumer, especially when the market itself is changing so rapidly? What are the things that we should focus on?
Well, I think the first thing is to start understanding how the brain works and not rely on focus group discussions. If you ask consumers questions to their conscious mind, you won't get the right answers. You have to find a way to get to their unconscious mind. So if you really want to build up trust and discover what people need, you need to not use the not very effective research techniques which have been developed, and there's newer techniques which are now developed. They're available in India as well, I know, and use those to get to the heart of what consumers really think.
Okay.
Well, I think increasingly if your brands want to build trust, one is of course what you're saying, but I think one of the reasons that a guy from a media agency is talking about brand trust, I don't think it would have happened in the last AdAsia we had in India, is primarily because the entire tools of talking to the consumer have changed enormously in the last decade. And I think how you say it is now becoming increasingly as important as what you say. So, and these tools, and I think a lot has been spoken about right through the 2 days. I think the important part is integrating the old with the new. Don't discard the old, embrace the new.
If you're trying to build or position yourself as a trustworthy brand, make sure that all your employees, distributors, partners, all basically people connected with the organization also live up to that promise, because you don't know who's interacting with the customer at what point in time, and if there isn't that consistency in the messaging, you'll create a credibility gap that's even bigger than otherwise. So it's about that consistency over time and across all touch points. That's critical in my view.
Yeah, and I think in India there's a particular challenge because, as I said, for instance, there's so many first-time buyers coming into so many different brands, so people moving through an economic demographic. So as a brand, there's a particular challenge here in India where, for the first time, people are buying four-wheelers. So what are you going to do to ensure that that experience they have, where they really haven't experienced that product previously, meets their expectations, and they understand what the capabilities of the product are and what the capabilities of the company and the support structure and all of those things are. So this is a particular challenge that I think we continue to work through, and really it's an exciting challenge because there's 3 million car buyers this year, car and commercial truck buyers. In 2020 there'll be 9 million, and so there's 6 million people out there whose expectations are coming, and we better make sure we meet them, and they'll change over time. So it's going to be a big challenge and for all of us, and I'm looking forward to it.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. It's been a very enlightening discussion. I think it's given us a lot to think about. And I think the sentiment that's been echoed here is that there are different ways and means to communicate and to understand the consumers. But the most critical task for brands today is really combining a sense of innovation and engagement, but maintaining a constant code of conduct over time. And, understanding how to do that and communicate that and engage and make sure we're understanding expectations is a journey that I think we'll all have to work on, but it's certainly worthwhile. I think we can see that the benefits of trust in terms of our actual financial performance and in having delighted consumers are certainly worthwhile. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Prahlad. Thank you, gentlemen. I'd like to invite on stage Mr. Bhaskar Das, President of the Times of India Group and Co-Chairman Organizing Committee, AdAsia 2011.